With us today at the APBA Football Club is Mr. Bobby Porter. He is a bit of a league free agent, if you will. He's been around the APBA football world a lot. Welcome, Mr. Porter.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I've been thing that really caught my eye most recently is all your custom fields on Facebook. How are you? You're getting these done with a print shop you mentioned.
I am, yeah. I have a local print shop. It's kind of funny. So, Greg Brath, with his website, and it caught my eye with his fields. So, and I reached out to him probably like 4 or 5 years ago, I think, maybe 4 years ago, and asked him how he did his, and he told me he had a print shop himself. So, how he got it made. So, I have one 5 minutes from my house.
Nice.
So, which is really nice, yeah. And it's a small. I live in North Carolina, a small little town, and it has this print shop. And I stopped by. I started with baseball first, and then I went to the football fields, and so I've made about 25 so far. And actually, I went today, and I'm doing another 10. So
Nice.
I emailed them the fields, and then I went ahead and dropped off the football and yard markers so they can make the lines for the ball and marker. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That, folks, is dedication. See, and it's the print quality of APBA that really, you can't help it. It's just that customization. It so lends itself to that.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely. And if I was a kid, when I first started playing, if these were available back then,
right.
I mean, I'd be begging my parents to buy me, every single field for every single team at that time. So
for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, it gives you that more detail when you play the game. You know what I mean? You're actually playing on, if it's Three River Stadium or Heinz Field, or it's nice that you're a Steeler fan, Jeff, because I am too. But even if, listen, I grew up in New England, so I grew up in Maine. So, all my buddies are Patriot fans. So, I have to have a Patriots field, unfortunately, even though I can't stand them. Maybe not so much now since Brady's gone, but
there you go.
Yeah. So I have to have a couple fields. I made one for a buddy of mine as well. So my buddy's a big Pats fan, so I made a Foxborough one for him. So
where in Maine? Just curiously.
Augusta.
Okay. Yeah. I was up north in Presque Isle, Millinocket for a good while.
You're way up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was in Augusta, so the central part of the state. So
nice.
Hour from Portland, hour from Bangor. So yeah.
Exactly. Cool. Nice. So how do you spec out these fields? I think you had shared a resource, gridiron uniforms, or a database of fields or something.
Yeah. So gridironuniforms.com, they have a ton of fields. And so I peel them off of that. You can go ahead and just copy and paste and put them into, I do Excel, and then I'm able to do in a PDF form after that. And so then I'm able to send those to my guys to print and then put them onto the boards. So they, I know Greg has some on his site as well. So I think he has all the current fields. And then of course, Gridiron Database has a bunch that actually, has old time fields. And also Jerry Zajack, as you know very well. Jerry somehow has a ton of fields himself. Nice. Jerry's just a great resource, period. Just APBA in general. So
absolutely.
I know you guys mentioned the Hall of Fame. He's definitely a Hall of Fame. There's no question. What his knowledge is, not to get off topic, but
totally.
With what Jerry can do, or what he knows, is his replays, his knowledge of every single game APBA's produced. And then, he's given me a bunch of fields as well. He's given me probably about 30 fields so far.
Wow.
That he has, that I'm able to translate into my boards. Yeah.
Interesting. So do you do much solo play, or is it strictly league at this point?
I've dabbled into solo. I haven't done a full season. I've done playoff solo plays. I did just recently. I think I did it in 80. I think it was 89 replay. Oh, so of the playoffs. So and it was San Francisco versus Denver, and it was kind of crazy because Montana's passing stats, I don't have it in front of me, but his stats were close to game stats, which is pretty cool. And I think it wasn't a blowout. It was like 27-10 or something like that was my final. But I did the 89 playoff. That was probably about a year ago. Okay. So that was fun. But I don't do a lot of solo. I do more baseball solo, just team wise. And right now I'm doing the 88 Pirates replay. That's when I was a senior in high school, and that's when they kind of turned that franchise back to winning again in 88, and then they stumbled in 89, and of course 90, 91, 92 with Barry Bonds. So, but yeah, I'm trying to get into the replays. That's why I'm making these boards, because I want to get into solo replay eventually. But mostly right now it's league play.
So what was your first kind of APBA year and your first APBA, game and experience and all that good stuff? How'd you get into it?
It would be, yeah. So my dad's the one that made me an APBA nut. So he, my dad's 70, he'll be 71 this July. So he was playing in the 60s. So, and then when I was born, and then he was still playing, right, in the mid to late 70s. I was, I think, 9 at the time. And so it was perfect because our family, Pittsburgh Pirates, were coming up. So 1979, so it was the 80 edition, 79 season, which got me hooked. And after that, I carried that through my buddies, and I was thinking about this today, where we, as a kid in the 80s, we played baseball during the day, right, or pretty much in the morning, and then it got hot. We actually, 6 to 7 of us would come to my house. We'd bring the picnic table into the garage, and we'd play APBA baseball until dinner time. And then if we have Little League games, we go to our Little League games, or if not, we come back and play more APBA. So we did that. I did that probably from, I'd say probably like from 81 through 84, maybe, until we got to high school, the cool stage. And so APBA kind of I still played APBA baseball though, up until my senior year. So, but my buddies kind of, got away from it, and I kind of played solo, 25 to 30 game seasons. So.
Interesting. Yeah. Cause I would consider us kind of that younger generation in APBA, we're that second wave. I mean, like your dad, that folks are there in the 50s and 60s, like that's the real, Mach 1 kind of thing.
Exactly.
And then we kind of grew up. I mean, video games were coming up, but certain of us stuck with it. I wonder why you think that is. I mean, particularly when you're playing Little League too. So you're actually doing sport and playing the games. I wonder why you think you stuck with it.
I think the realism, and I know, in your interview with Greg, you guys talked about, it was almost like a history lesson with players. And so with that being said, you can't do that with a video game, right? You can't go back. You can play with the current guys, I guess. And at the time when we were growing up, they didn't have the players, right? They were just, just digital guys and didn't have names or anything, right? So I think probably that. And then when we got older in my college days and in the 90s, I mean, they started to put players' names on it. But I don't know, something about APBA and going back into the history, because it's all current. I think they're finally going. I don't know if I don't play video games, so I don't know if Madden goes to the the 70s or 60 players. I don't know if they do that or not. I know baseball's done it, but I don't know, just something about, rolling the dice and looking at a card and looking at the players' names and just knowing the history and, thinking about when we were going, at least in the 80s, probably haven't heard this name in a while. Like, you went through their characteristics, what they were good at, right? So you can look at a card and say, oh, this guy's good defensively, right? So I can remember, like, in the 80s, like Ivan DeJesus, right? I think he was a 9 at shortstop. And so you knew he was good. He was a good fielder, but hitting wise, his card's not that great, but he's a good fielder. So I want to play him at short or what have you. Now you can look at, Willie Stargell's, MVP year in 79 and go, it's a damn good card, and Dave Parker and things like that. So you could look at a card and say if a guy's good or not. And then you can go back in history. And I learned so much about the 1960 Pirates because that was my dad's team. And we had that set. Or not that set, but we had the all-time great. So that was part of the all-time great set was a 1960 team. So I always used that team. So I learned, Bob Skinner and Bob Friend and Vern Law, those guys that you might not have, that kids today probably have no idea who those players are besides Roberto Clemente and Dick, no one knows Dick Stewart, I don't think, but, Dick Grote, guys like that. So I learned those guys and I learned the history of baseball and football by playing APBA. So, which is pretty damn cool, where you can't really do that to me in a video game.
No, exactly. I have seen, and I was just watching someone, I meant to post some commentary on this. Someone was doing a 1961 Titans Colts game where you can kind of summon up the old games on video on Madden, unlock them or something, but the jersey names are all wrong, I guess for licensing purposes, whatever, states, and it's all in the contemporary visual. It's just kind of, it doesn't really equate, but with the cards, like you're saying, when you really learn, you project into it. It's like, who is this guy? Who was he? Exactly. Outside of the performance. So cool.
No, it's very cool. Yeah.
So now I know we went a little slightly tangentially here, but so you are a multi-leaguer, which is interesting in any APBA sport, but particularly for football. And you've kind of made the rounds to, two of the oldest ones, the Suncoast that Ray Dunlap founded in '79, and then the NCFL, which grew out of a male league in '81, and now the ACFL, which I think Greg Barrett has joined that one, right?
Yeah, it's correct. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. So it starts with baseball again. So it's kind of funny. My dad's a high school referee. And so quick story. He was doing a game and of course he went through the cafeteria and there was guys that were playing APBA baseball. And so he stopped and talked and he got some guys after the game, he said, "Hey, these guys are playing APBA. They have a team available. Don't know if you're interested or not. Here's the guy's name and number. Give him a call if you're interested." So sure enough, I gave the guy a call and we talked for about 30, 40 minutes and said, yeah, you can go ahead. We need a manager, take over this team. And so I did. And so I was in the TBBA, which was the Tampa Bay Baseball Association. And then there's a guy named Pat Patterson, who was also in the league. And after a series, we were talking and he was in the SFL. And they said they had an opening at the time. And sure enough, I talked to him and said, yeah, I'd love to play APBA football, and got into the league. And this was, I think, in '97, Jeff, I started. So I went from '97 to 2006 in the SFL. Ray was already gone. I don't know Ray Dunlap at all. I've never met him. I heard he's a great guy, innovator with APBA, of course. And that's the thing about the SFL. It's a different game. They don't use the APBA boards. They have their own board. I don't know if you know this or not. They have their own boards. Yeah. They have matchup decks, which is pretty cool. An innovation, I think, of Ray's. And so I did that. Like I said, I did that from '97 to 2006. Great bunch of guys. I used to get on the website to see how the progress was, and see how they were doing. There was two guys that really made that league work, and it was Chuck. I don't know if you know Chuck Halling, and then Ernie Charette. And Ernie Charette was like the Bill Belichick when I first came in. He was always the one that was winning. The league, and he always had a good team. So it was always good. If you could knock him off, you did something that day, you know what I mean? If you're able to beat him. But yeah, I do miss that league. It was tough too. So I moved up to North Carolina in 2006. So I went vacant from an APBA League football league. And it was just like, oh, I miss it. So
Well, yeah, I mean, for 9 years, I mean, the chief issue is often, how do I schedule this game? You're using Skype. Back then, that was face to face, I imagine.
Face to face, yeah.
So now but either way, face to face or Skype, I mean, you've got to block out that window of a minimum of 3 hours. How did you kind of maintain your athletic APBA stamina for that 9 years?
I know that was tough. So what was nice is, and this is probably unique too. I had a buddy of mine, Don Golden, and childhood buddy, right? He was one of those guys back up in Maine that that played, we played until the, actually the streetlights came on, right? So he moved down, he finished law school, and myself and another buddy of ours from high school were down in Tampa, right? Just starting out. And he came down to start his career, and he's still down there today. But anyway, big APBA guy as well. Doesn't play now, but he was a big APBA guy. And so I said, hey man, why don't you team up with me? And we'll be teammates, right? So we'll just own this team. And then because of where he lived in Brandon, I don't know if you're familiar with Tampa, it's pretty spread out, right?
Yeah.
So I lived in Tampa and he lived in Brandon.
Okay.
And so he would play the guys in Brandon and Plant City and around that area. And I would play the guys in Tampa. We would sometimes team up, which was kind of neat. I was the offensive coordinator. He was a defensive coordinator. So that was kind of fun, right?
Interesting.
It threw guys off a little bit. But we stunk our first couple of years. But yeah, so to juggle that, it's tough, right? You have to have a commitment. I was just starting a family as well.
Sure.
At the time I was dating my wife, I got married in '98 and we had our daughter in '99. So that was tough to do. But I think with my daughter being little at the time, it was easy to juggle, right? So if I got off work, I can go ahead and go to someone's house from 6 until 9 and then come home. Thank God I have a wife that understands my hobby and what makes me happy. So she was all in and let me have some fun. So yeah, that was great. So but yeah, it was nice having a buddy with mine. What was nice too is which I feel I have an asterisk next to my name on this. So in 2006, we actually won it all, but I played the regular season games, and then I had moved to North Carolina. So he took over in the playoffs, and he ran the table and won it. So
Wow.
yeah, so it was nice, but I have that asterisk because I actually didn't truly win it. He won it. So, but our names are next to each other in the SFL, in the rule book, or not the rule book, but in the record books, I should say.
Annals of history. Oh,
yeah,
man.
exactly.
So that is a true point. Yeah, your spouse is a big part of league play. That's kind of job number one, ingredient one, right?
Absolutely.
And yes, I remember I was looking back at the interview. We first connected with Ray in 2012, and he talked about throwing out the old boards, recrafting all the old boards, and I just wonder, how do you get used to all that and create strategy?
I guess because I didn't play APBA for a long time, it was new, so it was easy transition for me.
Sure.
It was harder for me from the SFL to the NCFL, because with the SFL you only had you had inside run, outside run, so it was plunge, running play, and then short pass, long pass. That was it. You didn't have the draw, didn't have the screen, right? You didn't have a medium pass, so those weren't included in the SFL, right? And then of course the matchup deck. So as far as that goes, that was an easy transition for me. And I felt the stats were pretty right on. I mean, the formulas that they do a quota for how many receptions you have. So you can only throw to a certain guy so many times in a game. So, you can't throw, if you have an A receiver that might've caught 50 passes, you can't throw to him all the time. You can only throw to him maybe 5 or 6 times a game. So if it's an incomplete pass, it's attempts. It's not catches, it's attempts. So, some of the innovations they did were really good. And as far as strategy goes, I mean, and it's the same thing with the way I go today. You have to have a high percentage quarterback. I mean, to me, it's a quarterback league, even back then to now. And then just, you have to have a good running back as well. I think if you have those two things, and then a good defense, I think you can win. And that's the formula that I went with. And at the end of the SFL, I started to win. And then of course we won it all with not my help, but sort of my help. Cause I got us into the playoffs. So, but Donnie took it home for us, but yeah, I think a high percentage quarterback and a good running back to me, as far as not giving too much out of the play calling that I do, but you got to mix it up too, right? Just like any other thing in football. So.
And in terms of the drafting, as I understood it for SFL, every round, if a first rounder didn't get picked in the first round, he's off the table for the round 2 of the draft. Was that still the rule then? So that
the draft, the way they did the draft, so they didn't want to have an all-star league, right? So which was really strategic as far as drafting. If you want to talk strategy, you got to figure out, position wise. So you really had to look at your team and see what you needed, right? So you couldn't just take a wide receiver, and then all of a sudden you get a guy that was in the first round that got overlooked and got him in the 8th round, right? So the way the SFL did it is if the guy was drafted in the first round, you can only draft him in the first round. Yeah. And he was only eligible for 2 years. Wow. So if he didn't get taken in year 1 or year 2, then he was off the table. You couldn't draft him again. So if you had a first rounder who kind of stumbled the first 2 years, right, in the NFL, and then all of a sudden came out and became the superstar they thought he was in year 3, he wasn't eligible for you to draft. And that goes with the second round too. I think the 3rd and 4th, I think that's where I think they could go whenever you want to draft them, as far as 4 years down the road. If you want to draft a 3rd rounder from say we'll use now, say 2020, if you want to draft that guy, he might be eligible in 2024. But the 1st and 2nd rounds, once the 2 years is up, they're done. So I was told that Joe Montana was never drafted and was never used. So that is, to me, that's just nuts to think that. To me, one of the top 3 quarterbacks of all time never to play in the SFL is nuts. It's just nuts.
It's kind of like the ultimate what if. I mean, yeah, Steve DeBerg. We talked about that with Ray. Yeah, that it's just it's really that you tout Madden in the franchise mode, and where you can kind of create your own player and join the team and all this stuff, go through the trade, build your career. But I mean, really, when you're talking about something like the APBA League, I mean, it's general manager stuff. It's exactly as advertised.
Oh, absolutely.
You're the coach and all that good stuff. How do you did you find that everyone in the league had kind of a play style, or was it basically, dealing with you've got your high percentage quarterback, you got your, I don't know if you even used asterisk receivers. I mean, if you did, I mean, that's
We did.
Yeah,
Yeah, we did. We did.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, some guys, are throwbacks. They like to run the ball. So you're going to have the guys that are going to, they want to strategically run the ball all the time, and then occasionally throw the pass in. So, everyone's different. I'm a type of guy that loves throwing the ball. I love throwing the ball, and I'll sprinkle in a run here and there, right? So I just like going. I like throwing. I'm almost like Don Coryell, let it fly. So, back in the 80s, that's the type of person I am. Yeah, I just like to, air Coryell, just want to throw it, and sprinkle in some runs, right? So everyone was different. I think, some guys would be like myself and like to throw the ball, and there was a lot of guys that would just like to run the ball. So, so you can pick up trends that way too. I know one guy would go ahead and every time you run a play, you'd have PR, right? Okay, first down, he passed, so guys would track during the game what you did on first down, second down, third down. So it's pretty unique. A couple guys, not everyone did that, but a couple of guys did that. So
yeah, it's like you gotta have kind of a poker face too, right? I mean,
absolutely. No, absolutely.
So all right, so the NCFL is a completely different set of rules. How did the ACFL, I imagine, kind of is an outgrowth of the NCFL, right? They're about 2 years apart in origin.
I think so, yeah. So so when I joined the NCFL, a couple of years later, like you said, they decided to branch off and so the NCFL is more of, I wouldn't say it's an all-star league, but everyone's eligible, right? Every player is eligible. So where the ACFL, they wanted to kind of streamline it where it's not a superstar league, so to speak. So not everyone's been drafted, right? So we take the worst 3 teams in the NFL, and that's what we draft from. So it depends on their winning percentage. We take the 3 worst winning percentage teams, unless you're one of those teams, right? And so we have base teams. So everyone was able to draft a base team to start out with. Now, I originally was the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I dropped out because of just time constraints. Didn't have time for 2 leagues, right? So unfortunately, I dropped out. And then a couple years later, I came back in, and I took over the Atlanta Falcons. That was the team that was available. So I took over the Falcons. But you get basically 12 players off of that team. So you have 10 base players. You can put 2 on taxi squad is what you do. So those players you can't use unless someone gets injured for multiple games or a game or multiple, then you can bring them up from the taxi squad. So you get to pick 10 players from that squad. So offense, defense. So like I can keep Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Todd Gurley, just to name a few, right? And then I can, and then defense, whatever. So, but if a guy leaves, so for instance, Austin Hooper left, went to Cleveland last year, right? So in 19, he was on Atlanta, and then he went to Cleveland for the 2020 season. So if he's on your base and he goes to another team the following year, you get his rights still. You keep his rights. So, which is kind of a nice little feature. So they call it freebies. So if a guy leaves your team, if he's on your base to begin with, you get to keep him. Okay. So yeah, which is nice. So so you don't lose a guy, so to speak. But if a guy, for instance, like Alex Mack, who was a center for the Falcons last year, he was on Cleveland years ago, and he was drafted because Cleveland was, one of the worst winning percentage teams. So he was drafted by another team, previous years ago. So I was not able to, keep him, and I was never able to have him on my roster to begin with because he was already picked. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's the same rules as APBA. We play the same rules. The one thing is the index. So we roll on every series to see what index you're in, based on your, based on the offense and defense, whatever your numbers are compared to your defense or offense. Your opponents.
That was a different allocation chart than the Fletch 67, right? That's a whole
correct. Yeah, that's actually in the book. That's in APBA's, I think on the back binder.
Right.
Yep. So you can roll that, and that's so every series will roll that. And so whatever your index points are, against your opponent, that's where you're going to fall. So you could be in A's, B's, and C's. So it depends on how good your opponent is or how bad they are. You could be in the A's all the time, or you could be in the C's on how you rolled. So I know like last year, my defense was horrendous, and one team was unbelievable offensively. So he was majority in the A's against me. So that wasn't fun.
Yeah, that's a hard road to try
Yeah,
to.
it is a hard road. Yes.
Man, oh man. And speaking in terms of kind of pickups and having personnel, in terms of in-game, you talked about in-game usage. You got a 50 catch receiver, so you got to limit attempts to him. What about kind of the you've got your OC kick returners, your TC kick returners. Is that solely at your discretion? Your second string backs and receivers, you rotate them in just to kind of. Is there some sort of definitive allocation there, or do you just, it's totally your discretion, and that's more of a strategic thing? You bring Theo Bell in and sit Swan for a second and, kind of try to get some sort of advantage there.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, it's so you get, the way they do it is, you get so many attempts or so many catches right throughout the season. So we only play 10 games in the ACFL, right? And we play 13 in NCFL. So NCFL is based on your season stats. So if you have 104 catches, you have 104 catches for the entire season, but it includes the playoffs. So if you make the playoffs, so you don't overuse somebody, because then, so for instance, like I had Odell Beckham Jr., right, when he had 25 catches. So he was an asterisk, but he had 25 catches. I sat him for the entire season, thinking I could make the playoffs, and then I can use him, right? So I had 13 or 12 or 12 and 13 in the playoffs, right? Because you have 2 playoff games, conference championship and the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, I made I shouldn't say unfortunately, I made the playoffs, but I lost the conference championship game. So, but I saved Beckham for that reason, right? For the asterisk. So so you can use, like I said, it's all based on the 20, so it'd be the 2020 stats. So whatever they did, that's what you have in the NCFL. Where the ACFL is, there's a formula that we use, and I think it's top of my head, I'm bad with it. I always ask Jerry for help on it. I forgot how we do the formula, Jeff, and I do apologize, but it's based on a formula that kind of cuts guys down. So, for instance, I think like I have Kittle as my tight end. I think he can only catch 40 balls for the 10 games, and then we redo it for the playoffs. If you make the playoffs, so that's 4 catches a game for him. So yeah, there's a formula that we use for the ACFL that limits guys. So they're not overused, so to speak. So as far as like a TCOC, whatever the limit is on that, if they have 1 or 2, returns, then you can use them at any time. You just have to notate, hey, I'm using so-and-so for the kickoff. So for instance, like in the NCFL, I have Lamb, right? CD Lamb. So he returned a onside kick for a touchdown. So he's an OC. So he's got 1s all over his card. So if I want to designate him as my kickoff returner for that one play, and he returns it, then that's it. I use him for that. So, and the same thing in the ACFL. It's the same type of thing. They have 1 or 2. That's what we can use them for.
Interesting. So now you were using Ray Dunlap's matchup decks with the SFL. Compare play with and without kind of matching up. You've got those interior linemen, you've got your 7 in a box versus, what's the game feel difference there?
So what's nice about the matchup deck that I really enjoyed was it's 1-on-1 with that opponent, right? So if it was a wide receiver or a DB, so say you had Deion Sanders, right, who's majority of his career is probably a 5, right? And then you had a lesser receiver that he was going against. He's going to dominate him. So what's going to happen is that when that matchup deck comes up, so every play you pull the matchup deck, so the defense pulls it and it'll say Deion's a D8, so D8 versus the 0-1, right? And so you read that, and it would be just say 5-3. So Deion's a 5. Say the receiver's a 3. So it would be down, one index down, and then down 2 lines. So, or vice versa, if you had a 3 DB and a 5 wide receiver, that's going to go up 1 index and up 2. And the same thing with that's why tackles, guards, centers, and of course your interior linemen were so important in that league as well, because you'd have that matchup. So if you had like Bruce Smith, right, who was a 5, and then your tackle might have been, say, Orlando Pace, who was a 5, so that would be a wash. So they'd be butting heads, but it's a wash. But if you had a lesser guy against Bruce Smith, he's going to eat him up. He's going to be down, down two and down an index. So that's the cool part about, about the index cards, is going head to head. The guys would be knocking heads, so to speak, a one-on-one. And that's why it was so important on drafting as well. You get, these superstar guys, and they make a huge difference in a game. It depends. It seemed like the D5 and the D1 came up all the time, or the 07 came up. I know I had Derek Brooks, the SFL.
Yeah.
And so he was always, how dominant he was, and he was always a 5. So it was always nice to, when you pulled his card, you see D7, it's like, all right, I got that 5 going against, maybe a tight end that was a 3 or whatever, so that was pretty fun. But yeah, it was all strategy. And guys before the game would look at your, because we'd have a sheet with everyone's, you'd have your lineup sheet, and you'd have to match it up and say, hey, I'm going to move this guy over here because, you have a 5, my guy's a 5, so he's not going to play D5 today, he's going to play D1. So you can, guys would maneuver guys. So when they did come up, it would be, it'd be pretty much a wash. So, which is pretty cool. I remember just, before the game, everyone's looking at their matchups to see, okay, who do I want to go against? And it was pretty cool. So yeah, that's the part of the SFL I definitely.
Are any of you folks heading down to Atlanta? Have you been going down there for the?
I've never been. Never been. I'm 2.5 hours away. I have been to in Alpharetta. I have been to, and I met John. I did go in there once. We went to I think I went to Atlanta Hawks game. They're playing the Warriors actually. And 2 of my buddies went down. We went down. We hit APBA, and it's a great facility. Believe it or not, they have a beautiful. When you walk in, have you been there yet? Or
no, not yet.
No, it's a beautiful display of all the games in a glass case. It's pretty cool how he has it displayed. And then of course the warehouse has all the games, and we walk back there, and my buddy and I were buying sets and things like that. But I've never been to the convention. My buddy and I, who lives up in Maine, Mike, we've talked about going to the convention one year. So it hasn't worked for me as far as my summer plans, unfortunately.
Sure.
I do a baseball trip with my dad every year, and so that's number one. And then I do a family trip, and that should be number one. It is number one, but my dad. But anyway, it's different times, so it works out. So that's 1A, 1B, I guess. But then I just never have made it to the convention in Atlanta, but I'd like to.
A lot of folks still talking about trying to get a video component down there. Mr. Herson, hint, Jerry Zajack and Steve Meyersberg and NCFL, ACFL, they've got it all cooked up for you. So,
that would be cool. That would be cool to do. I mean, I love to see us expand in the NCFL. It's 10 teams right now. I'm not sure about the other league members if they want to expand, but I know I think it'd be great if we did expand. I know Brad Morgan who and Vern Kelly, those are the 2 guys that kind of initiated the ACFL. And I know Brad wants to expand in the ACFL to get to at least 10 teams. So, but yeah, hopefully we will expand.
Do you think there's kind of a limit to the size that a league is manageable number of team wise?
Yeah, I think with football, just because of the time constraints, right? Because you got to dedicate yourself to 2 to 3 hours. It just depends on your opponent. So I know, like, if I play Jerry, we can get a game done in 2:15. Same thing with Vern and Brad, and some of the guys are, we might get done in 3. There's a guy, Jared Garman, great guy as well. He can get a game. He's great at typing, and that's the thing. If you're good at typing, that's the key is the typing. So Jared and Jerry are probably the best 2 typers in the league as far as getting the play result in and moving very smoothly. So I'm not bad, but if I'm playing those 2 guys, they're typing because they're quick and they're good. And that's the key, Jeff, is really the typing. That kind of can slow us down from time to time. Usually all of us can probably get a game in 2 hours or face to face, but with with the typing, that kind of slows us down sometimes, especially if you have a unique play, because you want to keep the dialogue going on the chat box, because if you have to go back and check stats, you can make sure, hey, oh yeah, this is what happened, let me go ahead and notate that, or make sure, hey, this guy did this and that. So it's definitely the typing that slows people down. So
sure. To recall really quickly, I know that that Greg Barrett has your method, the NCFL method, a play posted at ogard.net. We used to have it. I think we still have the Word doc, but briefly is you have to type in your first timing it. What is that order play? I think it was like you had to, down, yard line, and then you have to, the defensive person sets first and then the offense calls the play. How would that?
So what we do, so whoever's tracking the ball time, right? So whatever down it is, so they put 1st and 10, ball at the, say I'll use Pittsburgh. So I'm the Steelers in the NCFL. So I'll go ahead and so put 1st and 10, ball at the 25, say kickoff, right? Dutch back, ball 20, pit 25, 30 plays, right? And then we go ahead and then we both type in our play and then we say ready and we hit enter at the same time and boom, the plays come up. So there's no way of cheating. There's no way. And that's the thing with, I talked to Pat Patterson about that because I was telling him about with the SFL, hey, he was telling him about our league. And he's like, all these guys, they could probably cheat. And I'm like, no, listen, everyone's honest. There's no money involved, right? Now, listen, we're all super competitive. I can tell you everyone in both leagues are super competitive. They want to win, but they don't want it. No one wants to cheat. I can tell you that right now. If you win, you lose. It's playing the game of APBA that is the fun part about it. I think I went 3-10. I went 8-5 my first year, and then 3-10 my second and third year, and I still had fun. With my 3-10 season, I had a blast. I really did. Le'Veon Bell had I had Le'Veon Bell, and he had a hell of a year. I think he had like 1,600 yards for me in 13 games, or 1,900 yards maybe. Total, I don't know, something ridiculous. And but it was fun, right? I went 3-13 and I had fun. So that's the main thing. So, but yeah, all you have to do is put your play in. We both say ready, and then we just hit enter, and the play pops up, and then we read the play, and then we put the play result in. If it's a 13-yard catch to Odell Beckham, you put 13-yard pass Beckham, and then you put the down, and so 1st and 10, at the pit 38, and you put your play in again, and you go 29 plays. So. It's real easy to do. Yeah, real easy to do.
And so on, just to be clear, on the offense, you're calling 3 wide, 2 tight, etc. And on defense, you're saying, standard, key, Beckham, something like
Correct.
that, or standard or
Well, you don't have to put 3 wide. So what you do is you have, and if you want me to, Jeff, I can go ahead and demonstrate real quick if you want me to. If that would,
please do.
The only thing I don't have is I don't have the players because I ripped them all off because I have to get new ones, right? So
sure.
I'm as you know with my boards, I go into detail. So I like to have the faces on my with their ratings. So there's 2 guys that do it. I think it's just me and Brad. We love graphics, so Brad puts the logos on his team and
nice.
on his player cards, and I put actually faces. And I don't think I have them, but what I can do is I can switch my camera if you give me one. Yeah, I'll show you how we kind of do it. So it gives the audience and yourself an idea how we go ahead and do it.
Well, I remember the global tournament we did in 2014 with Phil Malloy out in Australia, and Mike McCune and I ended up in the final, and his 89 Niners carried the day. It was a really seamless system. It's surprisingly just genius innovation, really. I mean, the way it works.
Oh, it absolutely is. I just got to figure out how I can switch my screen here. Let me.
Or screen share yeah, and you're still using single camera for each user, right? Or are you up to dual camera? I forget.
Yeah, so we can get, so for instance, like Jerry, I don't know if I can do this or not. Jerry would sit, so Jerry Zajack would occasionally, well, he was doing it, he did it for like 2 straight years. I don't know how he did it, to be honest with you, because it'd burn me out. He would sit in he would be the referee, or he'd do all the typing for us. We're getting games done in an hour and 45 minutes. So he would read the boards. We would knock games out like it was nothing. And it was great to have Jerry in there. I think Jerry just does the playoffs right now for us.
Okay.
He just doesn't have the time, which I don't blame him. I would have been burned after year 1 doing every single game, but that's why the guy needs to go in the Hall of Fame. There's no question. But so you can get 3. Yeah, you can get 3 cameras in there easily. But he turned his camera off because of just because of the feed. We had feed problems from time to time.
Sure.
So he turned his camera off. I'm just seeing if I can switch this camera, and I'm not sure if I can or not.
No worries. How far apart are your coaches? You mentioned, I think you've got a coach in Canada. Now you get Greg out in Washington State. You're out East Coast. I mean, where, and the like the NCFL is based in Ohio, so you've got folks fairly well apart.
Yeah, so we have 3 guys in Ohio. We got 3 guys in Ohio. We got Dick Rupert, we got Jim Baker, and then Jerry are all in Ohio. We got Vern Kelly, who's in Virginia. You got myself, who's in North Carolina. You got Brad Morgan, who is in Kentucky. You got Jared Garman, who is down in Florida. And then you got Mark Harlow, excuse me. Mike's in Texas. You got Danny Henderson. He is in Arizona. So that's in the SFL. Hopefully I'm not missing somebody. I think is that 10 guys? I think that's 10 guys. Oh, then we got a new guy, Ken. I'm sorry. Ken's in Pennsylvania. I think he's outside of Pittsburgh, I think. Ken is brand new. He took over for a guy that left, just left. We don't know what happened to him. He just left the league, which is odd. And then of course and then it's pretty much the same guys. We have the same guys in the ACFL who are in the NCFL. And then of course now we have Greg out in Washington. So we got him everywhere, which is nice.
Right.
Which is nice. I mean, yeah. I mean, you're represented 7 states, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I mean, back around 2013, between the last Lancaster conference and the Atlanta conference, suddenly all these regional tournaments popped up. 99% baseball. And a lot of folks, from Jim Shea all over the place have been talking about doing, these kinds of things. It's great to have people seated all over the place to kind of help spread the game out, if at all possible. I mean, if there's somebody who's maybe in a Stratomatic, I don't know if you ever played other non-APBA games, but, it'd be a curious exercise to kind of try to bring someone into the fold who's maybe a second season person, for instance. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've dabbled in Strat, never really liked Strat. I mean, I did the baseball. I tried the football, I think, when I was in high school, and just didn't care for it. I like the APBA better. So, but yeah, it's like you said, it's nice to bring other people in that maybe have never played it or played, like you said, Stratomatic, and get them to swing over to APBA. I think APBA is just the best. I think APBA football really is the best head-to-head game there is out there.
Interesting. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
We did not pay that.
Yeah. I don't think it can compare to anything. Now, I haven't played hockey and I haven't played soccer, so I don't know how those two games are, but it doesn't compare to, baseball doesn't even compare to football. So I can't get this camera. I can't get the second camera to work. So.
No problem.
But I'll show you the board. So if you can see, this is what I roll in right here. So this is my foul board. So,
interesting.
Up here is a magnet. And so we put the players on here. So you'll know, like, if it's 3 wide, 2 tight ends, right? Or just standard offense, which you have, your 2 running backs, your 2 wide receivers, tight end. So, so you put the players here so everyone sees them on the camera, and then of course you're rolling here and everyone sees your dice. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, I go a little bit overboard with with the field, and I'm a nut. I really am when it comes to the graphics of everything. So
I mean, it comes down to prep. Some conversation on Facebook today, but it really is about understanding your players and all. If you've got to be detail oriented, or else there's too many things to lose track of, in terms of how to use your folks. Kind of understanding what's possibly more likely going to happen in certain field situations, things of that nature, So it's the more OCD or APBA CD you are, the better off you are.
Exactly, Jeff. It's funny. It's funny. I am. I'm. That's why with the boards I do and the baseball fields I make, I'm I'm OCD when it comes to that. I don't know how I got that way, but yeah, that's the way I am now. So I enjoy looking at the graphics, and I think, just like you said, the preparation is fun as well. Designing, your guys and your cards that you have to make as far as your player cards, and it's that part of it I just enjoy, as much as playing the game, so.
Exactly. So now your draft, as I understand it, is complete. You're about to kick off for the season?
The ACFL we are, we're going to do that in August. So we do it. So our cut down day is the 20th of June. So in 3 weeks, we'll get to our 48-man roster, and then we'll have a waiver draft. So everyone that's got cut, we do a waiver draft, and so you can pick up players that were cut. And then once we do that, and then we're going to start, I think, August 1st. So yeah, so the ACFL is the fall league, and then the NCFL is the winter league. So we start that basically January. Usually we start late December, but really the go date's like January 1st, and that goes until March. So the ACFL goes basically from August to I think October, basically, and then the NCFL will go from January to March. So
Excellent, excellent. You know, it occurred to me, I'd meant to ask injuries in terms of allocations. I remember when I was a kid, I used to do, you know, with the J4s, you know, in the original injury chart, you know, the max anyone could be out was 1 or 2 games. I kind of made it like half season, full season with a 2 or 12 roll. For league play, how do you handle that?
it's the same thing. So whatever the board tells us, right? So if we roll, 66 or double ones, I think it's 1 or 2 games. So, you can lose a guy for 2 games or a game. But if you can get it multiple times, I guess, so he could be out just not those 2 games. So if you roll him again, right, you can be injured again for another couple of games. So I know, like if you're going to be a playoff team, I know everyone pulls their J4s out. Like in the last game, if it's a meaningless game, we'll pull our J4s out so they don't get hurt for for that playoff game. So I mean, the odds of them getting hurt for multiple games is slim, but it has happened.
You never know.
You never know. You never know. I lost George Kittle last year for a couple games. It was regular season, thank God, but I lost him for a couple games. So, but it was a blessing because I needed some carry. So I had Devontae Freeman as my taxi squad player, and so he was able to carry the rock the whole entire game. So I saved, because I had Raheem Mostert, so I saved some carries for him. So which is a good thing because he was limited to begin with.
Nice. All right. All right. Well, awesome. We're going to be looking forward to it. You post your results on Delphi, on your website, on Facebook, or is there a better way to follow the action here?
Just on our website. So, the NCFL website, and I do the web. So Jerry and I do the website for the NCFL, and then I also do the website for the ACFL. So, I do, like I said, I'm pretty much the graphics guy. I'll try to, freshen up the front page. So it's something new with every other month or whatever. But during the season, I try to keep it updated the best I can with my time. But Jerry takes care of all the rosters on both sides. So, I mean, Jerry is just a blessing with what he does, to be honest with you. I mean, he keeps the glue. I mean, he's the glue that keeps the leagues together, to be honest with you. We have, like I said, all these guys are great guys, but Jerry stands out, there's no question about it. So, Jerry, if you're watching, thank you for everything that you do. I know everyone tells you that already, but we thank you. And like I said, everyone in both leagues are great, Jeff. And hopefully one day we can expand and guys like yourself and some other folks that want to join us it's a fun league. I mean, if you really like APBA and you want to commit, 2 to 3 hours, maybe 3.5 hours, once a week to play APBA football, I mean, why not, right? I mean, if you have the time, and you play a game that you really like or love, do it, right?
It keeps up on your math skills and your all kinds of good stuff. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And then do you need the websites on that?
I have, and I can post them in the video description. For folks, we'll post it in there, but the NCFL is jzajack.wixsite.com and ACFL APBA-league.wixsite.com. Very tidy sites, I must say, by the way. I think you should win a Webby for your visuals, by the way.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we take pride. I mean, like I said, I'm a big stat guy. I don't know if I said that earlier or not. If I'm repeating myself, I apologize. But I like to go back and and I'm sure other people do. We like to go back and you like to look at the draft and see, why did I take this guy or why did I pass on this guy? And it's crazy. It really is. It's kind of cool to look back, from maybe 6 years ago and say, I took that guy number 1. I can't believe I did that. Like I got some ribbing recently on my, I took D.D. Westbrook, I think 3 years ago as my number one pick. and that pick hasn't turned out very well. He's no longer on my team. I actually traded him a couple of years ago, but we rib each other from time to time on some picks that might not have been very good. So, but the one that I'm sure everyone feels the same way is Patrick Mahomes, right? I think he went, if I'm not mistaken, I think he went in the 7th round in our draft one year. I mean, granted, he only played one game, before he took off and became the superstar he is. But he went in the 7th round in our draft.
That's it. Yeah, it's it is an ephemeral kind of a thing. It's you just gotta, everything's got to be kind of on. It's got to fall into place. There's that kind of odd chemistry about it that hard to define, really.
Yeah, you just gotta have a hunch, I guess. You know what I mean? If you think this guy's going to be a stud, and able to pick him up, then hey, you got him. You got a good value for that pick for sure. So the draft's fun. The draft's always fun, regardless if it's NCFL or ACFL. The drafts are always fun.
Awesome. Well, we're going to be looking forward to the season here, and best of luck. Great to speak with you, Bobby. Thanks so much for your insights. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. And anytime, I enjoyed it. And thanks, Jeff. Absolutely, man.
You got it. Be well, and good luck in the league.
Thank you. I need it this year, I think.
All right. Be well.
All right, buddy. Take care. All right. See ya.
Yeah.